Originally, liquid fuel was the only way to give a missile enough thrust to carry a heavy nuclear warhead far enough to reach distant targets. However, engineers believed there must be a safer and more reliable way to power the missiles. Eventually, they turned to solid fuel. They envisioned a solid fuel missile as one built around a solid fuel core. Once ignited, the missile would burn from the inside out. This meant that airmen working with the missiles would not have to work with or around dangerous liquid fuel. It also meant the missile would have a quicker response time, be more reliable, and more cost-effective. After planning, experimenting, and testing, their efforts resulted in the development of the Minuteman Missile.
Time. Early morning of the 1st of February, 1961. At Cape Canaveral, the Air Force is ready for Minuteman's initial full-scale flight test. The 1st of the month is an appropriate date. For the first time in the history of the entire world, a solid propellant intercontinental ballistic missile would be fired. It would be the first ICBM to have its first flight test in a complete configuration. All three stages and re-entry vehicle separation would have to work in perfect synchronization the very first crack out of the box. Time of launch, 11 a.m. Within 15 minutes, the Air Force could report outstanding success. All three stages functioned as programmed. The re-entry vehicle hit the target as programmed, some 4,600 miles downrange. A truly remarkable achievement, accomplished only 2 years after the Department of Defense gave the Air Force the official go-ahead for Minuteman.
During the next 5 years, the number of the nation's nuclear missiles skyrocketed. The nation would construct 6 Minuteman missile wings throughout the Great Plains. These wings were based in Montana, Wyoming, Missouri, South Dakota, and North Dakota. Each wing was designed to have 3 squadrons. Each squadron was composed of 5 alphabetically designated flights. Each flight was responsible for 10 geographically dispersed nuclear missiles. Thus, each wing was responsible for a total of 150 nuclear missiles. Eventually, the nation would have 1,000 Minuteman missiles in its nuclear arsenal. These missiles could be launched at a moment's notice. The Air Force built the Minuteman facilities with one overriding concern. If deterrence should fail, the U.S. nuclear forces needed to win and survive a nuclear confrontation. The Air Force placed the Minuteman into and planned to launch them from the interior of hardened underground launch facilities. These facilities could protect the missiles from attack both before and during launch. The launch facilities were miles from the launch control centers or missile alert facilities, where missile crews could safely conduct launch. Like the launch facilities, the launch control centers were built deep into the ground. Every facility was at least 3 miles from the nearest other facility. This separation enabled one to survive if its closest neighbor received a direct hit. And this spacing meant that the wing you are now in, the 321st, comprised an area of approximately 7,500 square miles, larger than the state of New Jersey. Construction of the 321st Missile Wing, the 6th and final wing to be built, began in 1964, less than 2 years after the Cuban Missile Crisis. It was a massive and important undertaking. Constructing a missile alert facility like the one you are at now involved a number of difficult steps. First, land was purchased by the Air Force from area landowners. Next, the digging began. Oscar Zero, where you are now, required the removal of 91,000 cubic yards of soil, or enough soil to cover a football field 4 stories deep. Once the soil was removed, large steel capsules were welded in place. Then a steel rebar mesh was built around the steel capsules. Once the steel mesh was in place, it was filled with concrete. This concrete and steel mesh created walls approximately 4 feet thick. Once the concrete hardened and all of the surrounding support systems were put in place, layer by layer the land was filled and tamped, and filled and tamped. Finally, the support building that you are in now was built on top of it all. The result was a self-sufficient nuclear missile alert facility that housed all the necessary support personnel and the below-ground launch crews. Construction crews fought through the cold of North Dakota's winters and the heat of its summers. They encountered underground water tables and spring flooding that slowed construction. Mudslides from excavated walls and countless other dangers put their lives at risk. Regardless of these difficulties, the crews completed their work in a mere 2 years, and the 321st was operational by 1966. While most of the eastern and western seaboards may not have felt the impact of the construction, the people in this region most certainly did. Hundreds of workers were employed to construct the facilities. Housing and lodging quickly became a premium. Schools filled to capacity and then overflowed. However, most Americans felt that the Soviet threat was at their doorstep, and they would take what measures they needed to and spend what money they had to ensure the protection of the nation.